Imagine a Sunday evening, August 15th, 1971. Millions of American families are sitting in their living rooms, the warm glow of the television set flickering against the walls. The popular show Bonanza is interrupted. The seal of the President of the United States appears on the screen. Richard Nixon sits behind a heavy wooden desk. He looks tense. His eyes dart slightly, though his voice remains steady, practicing the rehearsed calm of a man about to pull the rug out from under the entire world. In an 18-minute speech, he utters a phrase that sounds bureaucratic, almost boring to the untrained ear. He announces the temporary suspension of the convertibility of the dollar into gold. At that precise moment, although almost no one watching understood it, the history of human civilization cracked. Before that broadcast ended, the money in your pocket was a claim check. It was a receipt for a specific amount of physical gold held in a vault, somewhere deep underground. It was a promise that you held something real. By the time the broadcast was over, the money in your pocket was just paper. The link between the physical world and the financial world was severed. For the last 5,000 years, money was an object. It was a shell, a coin, a slab of silver, something with weight, something that required labor to extract from the earth. But on that night in 1971, money transformed into a ghost. It became an idea. It became a measure of faith in the government. Most people believe that money is wealth, but this is the first illusion we must dispel. Money is not wealth. Money is the accounting system we use to trade wealth. And the moment that accounting system was untethered from reality, the rules of the game changed forever. We are living in the experiment that began that night. To understand why your groceries cost twice what they did a few years ago, why housing prices seem to defy gravity, and why the global economy feels like a casino that never closes, you have to go back to the moment the anchor was cut. You have to understand the day money officially stopped being real. To understand how a president could simply wave his hand and change the definition of value, we have to look at what money actually is, or rather, what we think it is. For most of human history, trust was local. You trusted your neighbor because you knew where he lived. If he borrowed a sack of grain and didn't pay it back, the social consequences were immediate. But as trade expanded across oceans and empires, you needed to trust people you would never meet. You needed a medium of exchange that didn't rot, didn't die, and couldn't be easily faked. Gold was the answer. It was chemically inert, scarce, and universally desired. It was the ultimate disciplinarian. A king could not simply spend as much as he wanted. He was limited by the amount of gold in his treasury. If he wanted to wage war, he had to tax his citizens to get the gold. The pain of war was felt immediately by the people. But gold is heavy. It is dangerous to transport. And so, the world invented the first great financial abstraction, the warehouse receipt. Picture a goldsmith in 17th century London. He has a secure vault. Merchants pay him to store their gold, and in return, he gives them a paper receipt certifying their deposit. Soon, the merchants realize they don't need to physically move the gold to pay for goods. They can just hand over the paper receipt. The paper is as good as gold. This is where the temptation begins. This is the seed of the crisis we face today. The goldsmith notices something. People rarely come to redeem their gold all at once. The gold just sits there, gathering dust. So the goldsmith has an idea, a profitable, dangerous idea. He starts writing receipts for gold that isn't there. He lends these receipts out to borrowers and charges interest. As long as everyone doesn't come for their gold on the same day, nobody knows the difference. The goldsmith creates money out of thin air. He creates the illusion of wealth. This system, known as fractional reserve banking, became the foundation of the modern world. But it was always risky. It relied on a fragile balance of confidence. If that confidence broke, you had a run on the bank. The illusion would shatter, the doors would lock, and the paper would revert to its true value: zero. Governments looked at this system and saw an opportunity. They realized that if they could institutionalize this trick, if they could become the ultimate goldsmith, they could finance things they couldn't otherwise afford. They could finance wars. They could finance massive public projects. They could finance their own re-election. Fast forward to 1944. The world is in ruins from the Second World War. The major powers meet at a hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to design the new financial architecture of the planet. The United States holds 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. They hold the cards. And so, a deal is struck. The US dollar will be as good as gold, fixed at $35 an ounce. Every other currency in the world, the pound, the franc, the yen, will be pegged to the dollar. It was a pyramid of trust. The world trusts the dollar trusts the gold. It worked for a while. It created an era of unprecedented stability. But the temptation of the goldsmith is eternal. The United States began to spend. The 1960s brought the Great Society programs and the Vietnam War. Guns and butter. The printing presses began to hum. The US was printing more dollars than it had gold to back them up. They were issuing more receipts than there was metal in the vault. The French were the first to call the bluff. In 1965, French President Charles de Gaulle, a man who understood the nature of sovereignty better than most, sent the French Navy across the Atlantic. He didn't want the paper receipts anymore. He wanted the gold. Other nations followed suit. They started redeeming their dollars. The gold began to drain out of Fort Knox at an alarming rate. America was bleeding its wealth. Nixon had two choices. Option 1, tighten the belt, stop spending, induce a massive recession to restore the value of the dollar and protect the gold reserves. This would be honest, painful, and political suicide. Option 2, change the rules. Nixon chose option 2. When he closed the gold window on that Sunday in 1971, he claimed it was temporary. He claimed it was to protect the American dollar from speculators. But in reality, it was a default. The United States government was admitting it could not pay its debts in the agreed-upon medium. So, they declared that the debt itself was the money. This is the mechanism that confuses almost everyone today. When money was backed by gold, it was an asset. When you held a dollar, you held a title to a thing. Today, in our fiat system, Latin for let it be done, money is a debt. It is a liability. New money enters the economy only when someone borrows it. Think about that for a second. When you take out a mortgage, the bank does not move money from a saver's account into yours. They type numbers into a computer. They create that money from nothing, based on your promise to pay it back. The money is conjured into existence by the act of signing the loan. This means that if everyone in the world paid off their debts tomorrow, there would be almost no money left in circulation. Our entire economic supply depends on us being perpetually in debt. This shift in 1971 unleashed a new beast: inflation. Before 1971, prices in America were remarkably stable. A bottle of Coca-Cola cost 5 cents for over 70 years. But once the tether to gold was cut, the restraint was gone. The money supply exploded. We saw the result immediately in the 1970s. Double-digit inflation, gas lines, the cost of living skyrocketing. But the government learned. They learned that they couldn't just print cash and drop it from helicopters. That caused panic. They had to be more subtle. They had to use the banking system. They began to manipulate interest rates. They created a complex system of bonds and securities that allowed them to borrow from the future to pay for the present. The consequences of this shift are written in the skyline of every major city and the rust of every forgotten factory town. When money is hard and scarce, you have to earn it by being productive. You have to make things people want. Profit comes from production. When money is easy and can be printed, profit comes from speculation. Since 1971, the financial sector has devoured the real economy. We have seen the rise of financialization. It became more profitable to trade currencies, bundle mortgages, and swap derivatives than to actually build cars or grow food. The gap between the wealthy and the working class didn't just widen by accident. It was widened by the mechanics of the money itself. Those closest to the money printer, the banks, the corporations, the government contractors, get the new money first. They get to spend it while it still has value. By the time that money trickles down to your paycheck, prices have already risen. The value has been diluted. This is known as the Cantillon Effect, an economic theory from the 18th century that explains why inflation is essentially a tax on the poor and a subsidy for the rich. And since 1971, this effect has been on steroids. Consider the housing market. In the 1950s, a single income could support a family and buy a home. Today, that feels like a fantasy. Why? Is it because we forgot how to build houses? No. It's because housing became a financial asset. It became a place to park all that newly created money. The house didn't get better. The money got worse. And what about the global stage? The decision in 1971 paved the way for a new kind of imperialism. The United States made a deal with Saudi Arabia shortly after the gold window closed. The deal was simple. The U.S. would provide military protection to the House of Saud. In exchange, Saudi Arabia would price all its oil exports exclusively in U.S. dollars. The Petrodollar was born. Now, if France or Japan or Brazil wanted to buy energy, they first had to buy U.S. dollars. This created a permanent, artificial demand for American currency. It allowed the U.S. to export its inflation to the rest of the world. We could print money to buy Toyotas and Volkswagens, and those countries had to keep holding our dollars to buy oil. It was a brilliant, ruthless system. It allowed the American empire to run deficits that would have crushed any other nation. It allowed us to consume more than we produced for 50 years. But all pyramids, no matter how grand, are built on geometry, not magic. We are now seeing the cracks in the foundation. The debt has grown so large that it can never mathematically be paid back. The interest payments on the U.S. national debt are now higher than the defense budget. The only way to keep the system going is to print more money to pay the interest on the old money. It is a snake eating its own tail. We saw this in 2008. The system nearly collapsed. The response? Print trillions. We saw it again in 2020. The response? Print trillions more. We have normalized the abnormal. We hear phrases like quantitative easing, and our eyes glaze over. But translate that into plain English. It means the central bank is buying government debt to fake the demand for it. It is the goldsmith writing receipts for himself. Modern money relies entirely on confidence. It is a psychological construct. It works only because we all agree to pretend it works. It works because when you go to the store, the cashier accepts the plastic card or the paper bill. But history is a graveyard of paper currencies. From the flying money of China's Song dynasty to the assignats of revolutionary France to the Weimar Republic mark, every fiat currency eventually returns to its intrinsic value. 0. The average lifespan of a fiat currency is about 27 years. We are now over 50 years into this experiment. We are in uncharted waters. This isn't meant to scare you. Fear is paralyzed. Understanding is empowering. The point of knowing this history is to wake up from the trance. Most people go through life thinking that the economy is like the weather, something that just happens to them, unpredictable and uncontrollable. But the economy is not the weather. It is a machine. It was designed by people, it is run by people, and it can be understood by people. The day money stopped being real was the day the world shifted from a system of value to a system of control. Money became a tool of policy, a way to steer human behavior, a way to quietly confiscate wealth through inflation without ever passing a tax law. So look at your bank account. Look at the number on the screen. Understand that it represents not a store of value, but a share in a collective belief system. The volatility we see in the world today, the rise of cryptocurrencies, the central banks hoarding gold at record rates, the geopolitical shifting away from the dollar. These are not random events. These are the tremors of a system trying to find its footing after 50 years of floating in the air. The era of fake money created incredible growth, but it also created incredible fragility. It allowed us to pull consumption forward from the future. But eventually, the future arrives. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. It reveals the patterns of human nature, the greed of the goldsmith, the ambition of the politician, and the willful blindness of the public. If you understand the past, if you understand what happened on that Sunday in August 1971, you will see the present differently. You won't just see rising prices, you'll see currency devaluation. You won't just see a stock market boom, you'll see an asset bubble. You won't just see money, you'll see the mechanism. And once you see the mechanism, the magic trick no longer works on you. You can stop being a spectator in the economy and start being a navigator. Because in a world of illusions, the most valuable asset you can hold is the truth.